As a published author and researcher at Georgetown University, Anagha has worked on groundbreaking studies in neurocomputational interfaces. Anagha's talk, Neurons and Infinite Mode, the Synapse AI Revolution, will discuss how neuroscience and AI are coming together to transform lives while addressing ethical considerations. She is also a dedicated humanitarian, leading international health campaigns and earning accolades like the Future Leaders Scholarship. Let's give a warm round of applause and welcome Anagha.
Okay, so good morning everyone. Can we hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so good morning. How are we feeling?
Amazing.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so today we will be embarking on an exhilarating journey into the Synapse AI revolution. And so today I'd like to talk to you about my research and my thesis, which I've conducted at Georgetown University. However, there is one warning I must give all of you. Please fasten your seatbelts. This is truly a topic that will jolt you off your seats. All right, so let's get started. Before that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Anagha Hamsala. I'm a grade 11 IB student at St. Francis Xavier Secondary School, and I was originally born in Canada. However, my roots are from India, and I am South Indian. I speak Telugu. Essentially, around 2 years ago in my grade 9 year, I was selected as the only and youngest representative from Canada to intern at Georgetown University. At Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., I was able to build an ethical research thesis alongside Dr. James Giordano, who is a world-renowned neuroscientist. Around 2 months ago, to my surprise, I found out that my research paper was actually published in the International Frontiers of Neuroscience in a science journal. And so essentially, this came as a huge surprise to me, because I was 15, and I had a published paper. Like, whoa, right? So, to me, that's where my passion peaked. Essentially, today, I'd like to talk to you about how we can utilize closed-loop neuro-computational interfaces for parallelized, unsupervised development, and how complex neural ensembles could be used in order to optimize learning. And now all of you are looking at me like, what did she just say? Like, what language is she speaking? Do not worry, I will try my best to demystify these terms for you in my speech in the upcoming slides. Okay, great. So, we all know the brain is a very complex organ. And it's truly fascinating to see how much functionality just takes place within such a defined space, right? So I want to go over a couple of definitions and some jargon with you in order for you to understand what I'm going to be covering. So first off, a neuron is basically a cell in the brain, and it transmits information through electrical and chemical signals. And then we have something called neural signals, which are basically electrical impulses which are generated by the neurons. And AI, which is artificial intelligence, and it's used to interpret the neural signals in the brain, and if it's used in a system, it can be used to improve its efficiency. Then we have something called an MEA, which is a microelectrode array. It's a grid of tiny electrodes, and they're used to record and quantify neural activity, and it allows for the monitoring of neural signals, specifically of that specific neuron. The activity is shown through a graph, and these graphs are basically just a bunch of little spikes, which we call spike trains. Then we have something called the BCI and NCI, which is the core of my topic, by the way, and this is called brain-computer interface technology, or neuro-computer interface technology. And it basically allows to bridge the gap between brain and external devices by allowing for communication between both of them. And so, we also have something called a feedback loop, which is incorporated in the BCI. And this is a process where the system receives input and then gives a response, which is known as the output. Then we have something called the closed loop system. And it's a system where the input and the output are continuously just connected. And it allows for real-time feedback, which means it's observing your brain activity in the moment itself. So, I'd like to begin with my research thesis and what it's basically about. Now, have any of you heard of Neuralink? Okay, great. Okay, so Neuralink was a company that was founded by Elon Musk, and what it does is truly fascinating. What it does is it allows for paralytic patients to be able to control devices with their thoughts. Whoa, that is crazy. I don't know how anyone could possibly do that, but I'm going to be discussing the technology that allows for that to happen. Basically, what my thesis does is we are extracting neurons from the human brain, and we are placing them on an MEA, which in layman's terms is a computer chip, and we are putting that MEA inside the BCI, or brain-computer interface, in order for it to form a closed feedback loop and optimize learning. And so, essentially, my research looks at how we are using brain-like systems in computers known as the closed-loop neural-computer interface, and it combines neurons with the MEA, or which is the current technology, the microchip for the computer. And what it does is allow for the computation, allows for the quantification of this neuron, and allows for us to understand its activity. And by doing so, we are able to see how neurons work together and learn from each other in order to enhance its functionality. Now, if we were to connect multiple of these systems together, we'd be developing a series of neurons working together in order to optimize learning, which means we're growing a more complex system, which allows for it to be able to complete much more complex tasks than current AI. There are essentially two main applications I'd like to talk about today in regards to closed-loop neurocomputational interfaces. Two of them being neuroprosthetics and neurofeedback therapy. Neuroprosthetics basically just means that we're restoring a function within a patient who has experienced any type of neurological condition. And in this case, it allows for the direct communication between external devices and the brain. And what it does, it allows for the improved mobility and motor control for patients with stroke and spinal cord injuries. The second I'd like to talk about is neurofeedback therapy. Now, neurofeedback therapy allows for us to enable real brain time activity. So by doing that, we are able to understand what the brain is doing at the particular moment. We are collecting that data, and we're able to monitor and treat mental health conditions such as ADHD, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Okay, so as amazing as NCIs sound, there are ethics and some limitations that are associated with it. As we are building this series, this array of multiple neurons in order to optimize learning, let's see how this is also limited. As the system grows more complex, this means that it's harder for us to be able to control it. It has the capability to develop feelings, and at that point, it's almost impossible to kill it. Like, we can't, it's basically a person at this point. So we need to be able to assert some sort of control over the growing complexity of this system. Essentially, the main limitation is the fact that it's unclearly reliable. Like, we cannot rely on this. It has not been acted upon yet. And so, essentially, that can lead to a lack of stability. Now, when it comes to brain activity, when we're using this to treat mental health conditions, we're often looking at the fact that it's accessing real-time brain activity, right? Which means it's accessing all of your brain's data, what is going through your mind. And by doing that, there could be privacy concerns associated with it. The data could be misused and used for the wrong purposes. And this could especially affect people who are, for example, in surveillance or the military, right? So that's something that we truly should be mindful of. And the third and the final limitation is the fact that there's a lack of adequate technology to be able to handle the power generated by these neurons in order to connect the MEA and the BCI. Now, I'd like